What is what is going on, y'all? It's your boy Pentley Holmes, that singer-songwriter in pursuit of a wild dream. I'm back again today with another video for you today. And in this video, as promised, I wanted to continue the conversation about my Spanish journey. If you watched any part of my last video that I've most recently uploaded, it was a video of me speaking in Spanish. I'm going to link that below or at the end of this video. Because I'm not monetized yet, I don't know if I can actually link videos or things down below in the description, but it'll be at the end of this video if you want evidence that I can actually, to some degree, speak this language. In this video today, we're just going to talk about my Spanish journey. And I don't have enough time today to talk about my entire Spanish journey. So we're going to do this one in parts. This is going to be like a little series that you can watch if you feel inclined, if you feel interested. But more importantly, what I hope you get out of this lesson is that if you're a learner of languages, a learner of things, or a person who just in general likes to learn, there will be something that you can take from this series. So don't just click off of this video because I'm specifically talking about my Spanish language learning journey. I hope you stay tuned. I have so much to share with you in el video de hoy. Okay, we'll see you in a bit. So talking about my actual Spanish learning journey, what things did I learn about Spanish? Why did I decide to learn Spanish? And what did I figure out during this process of learning? Because it's all encompassed in this thing, this whole theme of language learning. It's a very broad topic for me, and it could never have been covered in one video anyway. So I'm glad I have this little time restraint, but I wanted to make this video talking about it. My Spanish language learning journey started when I was 16 years old. There were lots of Puerto Rican people in my upbringing around me in the neighborhood I grew up in, and I always knew the Spanish language existed, but I never really thought that I could learn it. I never really cared to learn it, and I never just thought it was something that was possible to do because, you know, I never really understood how I learned English. I just something I've always known in my own memory, in my own mind. So we'll fast forward to 16 years old. I had a girlfriend who was Spanish. I went to high school. I met this girl. I became deeply attracted to her. And eventually she moved across the street, and she became the love of my damn life. She became my first girlfriend, and I learned everything about Spanish. It was, how do you say, the seed that was planted in me. But I still had to fertilize the seed. We would hang out and talk. We mostly talked in English, but she loved her culture, and she would speak Spanish in her house. Her mom actually didn't speak any English. And she was always speaking Spanish in the household. So naturally, without realizing it, I was picking up little parts and pieces of Spanish. And one thing about my mind is I have a very curious mind. So I was always asking, what did she say? What does that mean? What is this? What does this mean? And we would do little things like I would go over there for dinner and things like that. And her mom, she would let her cook. And she would cook, and she would be speaking in Spanish back and forth to her mom, and she would be explaining what things were in Spanish to me, you know, just teach me about the culture. And I didn't realize it at the time that I was absorbing all this. And I had a relationship with this girl for about 4 years. So 4 years of Spanish, not 100% Spanish. I would say probably about 30% of my life was revolving around this language that I would soon, well, many years later, I would fall in love with. And I remember one of the things, just to give you an idea of my comprehension of the language and like my ultimate love for the language. I don't know what I'm trying to say. But one thing I remember from this relationship was we were having a conversation and I asked her, how do you say that in English? And she thought about it and she tried to tell me how to say what she had said. And I don't remember what she said exactly, but she said that it doesn't translate to English. It doesn't make sense in English. And this was something that bothered me. And we had eventually gotten into an argument over this little thing. She said, it just doesn't make sense in English. And like, I was like, how doesn't it make sense in English? Like, English is a language. Like, what does it mean? You translate everything else. And it's just like, later on in my life, this was something that I would love, that completely fascinated me about the Spanish learning journey, because it is a journey. I'm still learning it, is that some things in Spanish don't exist in English. It still blows my mind to this day. It's like, you can have a concept of something in Spanish that you can't actually explain in English. For example, sobremesa, which the literal translation means, I guess, is about table. But what it means in Spanish is to actually sit at the table after dinner and like talk and hang out. And that's why a lot of times I learned in Spanish culture, like if you're in a restaurant, and this happens to me all the time in Colombia, I'll be in the restaurant just sitting there waiting for my check and they never bring it, you know, I'll just be there. They never bring the check because it's part of their culture. Sobremesa is part of their culture. People sit around the table after the meal and they just talk and they hang out. There's no rush like it is in America, you know, where the server's just saying, okay, I'll drop the check off because I know you want to go. And it's just like, I have to remember that, oh yeah, I have to go ask for my check. So it's like one of these little beautiful things about the language. And then after that relationship ended, it was about 4 years later that the relationship would end, maybe almost 5 years, somewhere around there, 4 or 5 years, 4.5 years. I started working in restaurants. Actually, while I was with her, I was working in restaurants, and I would just keep running into Spanish people in the kitchens, behind the grills, things like that. And it's like, this language forever fascinated me. And one of my really close friends, one of my best friends still to this day, good friend of mine, I'll say, his name Juan. He was a Mexican from Guadalajara, Mexico. And he was just part of my friend circle. And naturally, I hung at his house all the time. And I absorbed a lot of Spanish being there too, because in his household, they only spoke Spanish. They only spoke English when I was over there, or when anyone from our friend circle was over there. And we were just allowed to hang out at Juan's house. So we just all hung out there. And I never took advantage of the opportunity to learn the language when I was a kid. And I always wish now that I did, because I would definitely have a better grasp on it, even though I'm still learning language and I can speak the language. But I would have learned it a long time ago, and I would have developed stronger relationships and connections that I'm just now developing. And I would have learned experiences that I'm just beginning to experience now. So I would work in the restaurants, and I would just keep encountering Spanish people. Like, a lot of people know that Spanish people work in kitchens and restaurants, and I learned a lot of basic words like cubiertos, you know, apples, manzanas, cebollas, maíz, pan, you know, just like little things that I would use in the restaurant, you know, limpia la mesa, stuff like that. And they would be bussing tables, just little things like that. And I always thought like I could speak Spanish, and I would find myself in the kitchen, in the dishwashing area, on the grill line, just trying to talk to these people. So I had absorbed something from my first girlfriend, a love for this culture that would blossom into something much deeper way later. Fast forward about 15 years, maybe even 20 years, I don't know. It's been a while. I started playing music and all that. Obviously the pandemic hit, and then I was a full-time musician. The pandemic hit and I started working in a warehouse. I'll just say that I work for a company called Titan Corp. I'm still employed there to this day. And I noticed the first year there weren't that many Spanish speakers. It was just like whoever needed a job, you know? And it was just like a lot of people. And this company is just notorious for having, you know, a strict work policy. You know, you're always working, you're always consumed by your work. And naturally, I guess Americans don't like that. I don't know. I'm not going to try to explain that part. But In the second year, I noticed that there was an influx in Spanish-speaking people. And there was a woman there who I eventually met. I was always running into her, and I would always just use my little words, my little basic Spanish that I know, and just messing around. And she would just entertain me, She would just entertain me, and she would speak back to me in Spanish and teach me little words and little practice. And it's just like, I think that was the moment about 5 years ago. Yes, it was 5 years ago, when I realized, like, oh, you know what? I need to learn this language, because a lot of these Spanish speakers were in my job in many departments, and a lot of them don't speak English, or they don't speak a lot of English. And I realized that knowing Spanish, I already had the desire to learn it. I just didn't think that it was actually possible to learn it, that knowing Spanish would be a useful tool for me. So throughout the days, throughout the years, I worked there for another year. The first year I didn't really talk to Justina that much, but the second year we talked a lot, because we were always joking around and talking in Spanish, and she always entertained my Spanish. She always taught me things. She always allowed me to speak the little bit that I know. Most people don't give me that opportunity, even to this day, though I can speak it. I developed a love for it, and I loved the little time that we got to joke around, and even though I didn't really understand anything. And then that would fast forward to me moving away. I told her I was leaving, and I moved away. And then I just kind of forgot about Spanish. I moved away to Jacksonville for about a year and a couple months. I moved away. And then I came back, and she said something. I came back to the same building, and she had said something to me in Spanish. And I didn't know what she said. It was something she had said to me before. And she was like, oh, you stopped speaking your Spanish. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I did. And during the next 6 months, I would still be working in that building before I would decide to move back to Jacksonville, Florida. And she would start up the Spanish thing again, and I really started focusing on learning Spanish again. I was like, okay, I gotta learn this Spanish. I really gotta learn this. And I was doing little YouTube videos and stuff. That was one cool thing I learned about working in warehouses, was like, this job requires your body, but it does not require your mind. So I was able to train my mind throughout the day while working. And I'll get into that in a separate video. And learn this language. So we would practice for the next 6 months, and then the time came again when I said that I was leaving again to go to another building. Got to keep an eye on the time here. And I remember she said to me before I left, she was like, "Nunca pares." I was like, "What?" Never stop, She's like, "Never stop learning Spanish." She's like, "I've been learning English my whole life." She's like, "It's a process. You just keep learning your whole life." She's like, "Don't ever stop." And that stuck with me, it was beautiful the way she said it. I could tell she meant it the way she said it. And it's like, I remember that when I went back to Jacksonville. And then this time I went back to Jacksonville and I practiced every day. I remember I started with the basics, back from scratch, back from high school. ¿Cómo estás? Hola, muy bien, y tú? Little stuff like that. And I just kept going every day. And then again, like I said, amazing thing was that this job that I'm working at required my body. It did not require my mind. So I would practice and listen to the audio, the lessons every day, all day at work, basic lessons of Spanish for 10 hours a day, working overtime. So sometimes that would be up to 60 hours a week, because I would work 10 hours a day and just be listening to this in my earbuds, little simple stories for children in my audio, my auriculares. And I would just do it. And then I met Spanish people. I met another person down there who entertained my Spanish and allowed me to speak to him in Spanish, even though my Spanish wasn't perfect. He allowed me to practice. And these would be the instrumental, his name was Juan. And then there weren't many Spanish people working in that particular building. So my conversations with Juan were very instrumental until I met more people that would actually allow me to start speaking Spanish, but I always did it. And then I bought this book called El Principito. It's a book for 5th graders. And I started reading it in addition to listening to the audio at home. And I would highlight every single word that I didn't understand and look it up in Google Translate just to gain a better comprehension. And I did this for I lived in Jacksonville for 3 years and all. And I did this every day. You know, I was playing guitar stuff still, but I was really focused on Spanish. I was locked in. And then I met this girl who, she spoke English, but like, I just became like basically not obsessed with her, but I wanted to learn more about her. And then one day I actually got up the nerve to ask her out for dinner, and I did. Even though we had talked before, I never really noticed that she had a Spanish accent because her English, it's perfect, and her accent is very light. And I noticed she had a Spanish accent. And I said something to her in Spanish one day. You know, I said, "No quieres saber mi nombre?" And she looked at me like with a hint of confusion, like maybe I was a Spanish speaker. That was one thing that I learned from my first girlfriend, was how to pronounce the alphabet correctly. So I always knew how to say all the letters and the vowels. And not that I don't have an accent, but I know how to pronounce the words. So my accent isn't as strong as most gringos. And meeting this girl changed my trajectory of Spanish, because now I had an actual reason to learn a language, which is key for anything you want to learn, not just a language. Is you had to find out what your why is. Why are you doing what you're doing? In me, now I had a real why, not just I want to learn this language. My goal was quería cenar con ella. I wanted to have dinner with this girl, and I wanted to speak to her in her language. That was my goal. So I started learning it, and I never stopped. It just only intensified the passion that I already had for this language, and it became my why. And it's one of the things that I realized is like, if you can find something about anything that you're learning, and for me in this case, it was language. Guitar was also the same thing. Like, I needed a why to get better at it. I needed a why to keep going, touring, booking shows. It's like how I became obsessed with music and playing music. It's like I had a why, I had a reason. You have to find your why, your reason for what you're doing. And that is going to carry you through the spots where it gets frustrating and difficult, because learning a language is a very slow, arduous process. It's not fun. It's tedious. You learn 1%, probably like a year. The first year, you don't know nothing. The second year, you don't know anything. The third year, your brain has finally started to make some connection. So the language starts making sense to you. And it's a very, very slow process. You don't notice you're learning. You just learned 1%. Like, you never notice. So it always feels like you're never growing. You're never progressing. And it's the same thing with guitar. But that why, when you have your why and you become obsessed with your why, that's going to carry you through the difficult parts. And it's like, now, like, I know why I'm learning Spanish, even though she's no longer my why. I have a different why now. And I'll get into that in the next video, because now I have to return to Titan Corp. And we are going to go deeper in this video, this series. This is only part 1. But there will be many, many series, because this is a topic that I can talk to you forever about. But until then, hope this video has inspired you. Hope it's taught you something. If you're a language learner, feel free to subscribe, because I do speak a little bit of Spanish on my channel. It's mostly in English, but Spanish is also a large part of my life now. So if you're learning anything at all, if you want to learn how to learn things, that's something I've learned to do. Is I've learned how to learn things. I've learned how to acquire skills. Subscribe to my channel and hit the like button, because we're only going to go deeper. My name's Pentley Holmes. I'm a singer-songwriter in pursuit of a wild dream. And thank you very much for watching. Te lo agradezco muchísimo por mirando este video. Thank you.